Okay, we're going to start with Workplace Mentorship 1. Let's play a little word association game. In that phrase, let's pick out a word we want to work with. Okay, so let's pick out that Workplace Mentorship is about work. So the reason that we want to get involved with it is it's going to help us do our work. And if we're going to talk about work, what's your big concern about work? Why do you work? Okay, so let's think about the money part of work just for a few minutes. You're going to work maybe for yourself. Maybe you're going to work in a small to medium-sized company, 40%. Andre, 40% of Nova Scotians end up working in what's called a small to medium-sized enterprise, less than 100 employees. And a few people end up working for the big guys. But we're all going to work. Let's say you're going to start a business, and maybe it's a conduit. Okay, so you have recently been developing a skill in bending conduit. And some folks have thought about that, and they have answered the questions that I put out in the email, because what that means is they're taking the initiative by answering those questions to begin the process of the Workplace Mentorship 1. So it's a suggestion that you can do that. It's only a suggestion because, as I can show you later on, there's quite a number of ways of accomplishing the Workplace Mentorship 1 besides the suggestions I give you. But I suggest that you send those questions in to me. Okay, so you're going to have a conduit bending business. How much do you think we should pay an hour to our conduit bender? You.
$21 an hour.
Okay, let's do a little arithmetic. Let's start with $10 an hour. And let's say,
that's on the minimum wage.
well, I said we're going to do a little arithmetic. One of the things I found out in the last set of exercises, activities that we did, there was one page that was focused on making measurements and arithmetic. Most of the folks that I looked at there are about 80% on their arithmetic. So we'll just do a little arithmetic, and it turns out that if you're going to do some multiplication and so on, multiplying by 10 is dead easy. So a little hint is we won't stay at 10, but let's say we're going to start out paying $10 an hour. How many hours are you going to work a week?
None for that.
Yeah.
40 hours.
Okay, so what we're setting up here, Ian, is an example of critical thinking, where this is called suppose. So one of the things for critical thinking is suppose it's $10 an hour, and
If you live in China,
exactly. Suppose it's we get the idea that we're not going to stay at $10 an hour. So we're doing $10 an hour because can you multiply
that's
20? Can you multiply 20 by 40?
yeah, you can.
What is it? 20 by 40. What's 10 by 40?
10 by 40 is 400.
Okay, that's why we're using 10, Ian, is that
20 times
in
40 is 800.
arithmetic, if you go 10 by 40, you get it in about 2 seconds. If I say 20 by 40, you're kind of stuck. So a good trick for doing arithmetic is go by 10. Now, let's say 10's no good. What if we go to 20? We just have to double that. So if we pay somebody $10 an hour for 40 hours, we're going to pay them $400 a week. But that's no good, right? So let's say it's $20 an hour. So automatically we know we're going to multiply by 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay somebody at $20 an hour. We're going to pay them $800 a week to bend conduit. Is that okay? Okay. So are you by yourself? Let's say there's how many people in this conduit bending business? Maybe 2? So every week, if there's 2 people in the conduit business, so the weekly, every week we've got to come up with $1,600 for wages. So say there's 2 people in this conduit building business. Every week we have to come up with $1,600 a week for wages. How many weeks are there in a month? 4? What's 4 times 1600?
Which is called 52 weeks.
Well, because months are easier to think, because it's easier to multiply by 4 than it is to multiply by 12. Another arithmetic, make arithmetic easy for yourself. Okay, so $6,400 a month is what we're going to pay out in wages in our conduit bending business. What's the difference between a business that has to pay out every month wages, $6,400, rent, utilities, let's say that that's another 1,600. 6 and 1 is 7, 1 is 8. So say we're doing 8,000, and maybe there's other things like supplies and stuff. So let's say that, roughly speaking, by a little bit of rough arithmetic, you've got a conduit bending business, 2 people employed bending conduit, 40 hours a week for 4 weeks every month, and so every month you've got to put out $10,000, just like your bank account. Every month you've got to put out money for food and for rent and for a car and for clothes and for all those things. So you're running this business. So every month we figured out that you've got to come up with $10,000. Okay, so how much does that mean you have to come up with every week? So now we're going to look at what's called this is the expense side of your business. These are your expenses. Now we're going to look at your revenue. So this is kind of business 101. We're going to look at your revenue. And you say we've come a long way from the workplace mentorship. Not at all.
Well, like you're one of the employees, or you're not paying yourself?
You're one of the employees. So what we've decided is this conduit bending business has 2 employees.
You and someone else?
Yeah. And so maybe we have to double up here, do we, Sandy?
No. I was just wondering if we were
What?
factoring
I
in.
think 85,000.
Well, but the business owner today, Jason, is just, particularly if you're in one of those small to medium companies, less than 100 people, if the business owner isn't bending conduit, isn't putting in 2-way switches, isn't doing service panel upgrades, you're not making it. So this business has got to come up with $10,000 every month. How much is that a week? So if it's $10,000 a month, so the business has got to come up with $10,000 a month. What's that every week? $2,500 a week. Okay, so now we're getting to that. How much is that a day? Let's say there's 5 days in a week. So that's $500 a day. So just to break even, this little conduit bending business has to come up with $500 a day. So you have to bend enough conduit every day for your client to hand you over a $500 plus check if this business is going to be successful.
And that's just to break even.
And that's just to break even.
And you haven't included tax, but
And you haven't included taxes. The great thing about taxes, though, Tony, is if you don't make any money, you don't have to give anything to the government. So if you're just breaking even, if the way the government looks at it and says, okay, every month you bend enough conduit to take in $10,000, and every month you pay enough out in wages, rent, utilities, and miscellaneous to spend $10,000, as far as the government is concerned, you don't have to pay taxes because you're not making any money. Because what they call your profit is 0. Your expenses are $10,000 and your revenue is $10,000. So what you need to do in a competitive business is you need to say, well, I'm charging you $500 a day for all of the conduit I'm going to bend today. Now, what we need to realize is that if we're running this business or want to be hired by this business, we have to be able to do one of 2 things. We have to be able to come to this business and increase that amount of money. So if we're going to join that business, we have to be able to bend more conduit. What we've got to bring to that business is, if you're bringing in $500 a day for bending conduit, I'm bringing you a skill. I can bend more conduit, and I can put that up. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why you're doing the workplace mentorship is you're thinking about what is it that I can record, put down on paper, that I could take to an electrical services company and say, I understand that, for you to be a more successful company, you have to bend more conduit. Here I have some evidence that I'm the person that can help you make more money, bend more conduit. Because you understand Business 101, and you understand that what this company is mostly interested in hiring you for is to bend more conduit. And
Just charge the company a ridiculous price.
well, you could, but that's why we live in a competitive society, Ivy. If I charge $600 a day to bend conduit, my competitor's charging $5, I'm going to be sitting in an idle truck where my competitor's getting all the work because, the workplace is going to go with the $500 guy. So you really have to be able to bend more conduit to bring your price up. Okay, so that's why we're writing about bending conduit. Now that's just an example. It just says that I'm writing about bending conduit because I know this is a skill that if I can have evidence of it and bring it to an employer, I have a way to say to them, I can make you money. Now there might be other ways. Some people took their workplace mentorship questions about using a multimeter. And it's a little less clear how you can make money from somebody using a multimeter. So what I did for the HVAC trade when they said, the tool I use is a multimeter, I said, yeah, what you're really telling me is the skill that you're going to do to make money for your company is you're going to troubleshoot refrigeration systems. No, I didn't say that, Dave. Yeah, but you coming to me and saying, I can use a multimeter if I'm running an HVAC business doesn't translate in my mind to making me money. You coming to me in an HVAC business and saying, I can troubleshoot refrigerators, that makes me money. Okay, so that's why we're doing the workplace mentorship. We're giving you some tools so that you can tell companies that you're making more money. Now, that's the same reason why we do the portfolio. So we do the portfolio so that when you're in that job interview and the company wants to know what it is that's going to help them make more money, you have in your portfolio something to show them. You have in the portfolio, say, I understand in your business that the ability to bend conduit will make you money. Well, in fact, I'm the person who's just arrived to make you money. Okay, now the other two things that we want to look at here are from last week's activities. A lot of folks started looking at blueprints and arithmetic. Now, blueprints and arithmetic, it's very hard to make the case that just how much money are you going to make me because you can read a blueprint? Just how much money are you going to make me because you can do arithmetic? Because you can say, when this says, what's the difference between this many feet in inches and this many feet in inches, if you in your head can say it's 10 inches, how's that going to, the activities we did last week, how's that going to help you get a job? Well, it's down here. See, what happens with blueprints is, when blueprints don't get read properly, it costs money. So you have your conduit bending business, and the person that you hired is looking at the blueprint and says, we got to make a 45 straight 45 bend around that thing there, but it was really a 60 bend, and you put in the 45 bend, it doesn't match up, and you say, well, what's going on here? I got to make $500 a day bending conduit. I don't have time to take that down and rebend it. What's going on? What happened to that guy? Well, Jimmy, he couldn't read the blueprint. Well, so, one of the ways you talk to a company that uses blueprints, anybody that's doing electrical construction, anybody doing electrical upgrade, you say, well, look, one of the skills I have to save you money is reading blueprints. The HVAC class had a little example. The instructor gave them a little job to do, the first job in bending sheet metal and building a little tool tray for themselves, gave them the plans, and they all went together, went out, and they all got it wrong. It was a nice toolkit, but on the plan for the toolkit, on the handle, the blueprint said, put your two attaching screws that way. 100% of the class put their attachment screws this way. Now you say, what's the difference? The handle still stayed on the tool, but the blueprint said this, and what was put in place was that. So if you were building that as a part of a contract for somebody, and they compared the blueprint to the actual, they'd say, rebuild it. I'm not paying you for that. So that's just a small example of a class, and I think the instructor did it on purpose to say, how many times do we not stop to read the blueprint and make sure we understand it before we do something? Read the instructions before we do something. Look at the schematic and the picture. So those are areas where if you can show people you have skill in that, they know it's going to save them money. Because they know how many times people have gone ahead and put in some conduit, put in some receptacles, put in some fixtures without reading the blueprint, and they've had to take them out. And so you got to make $500 a day to stay in business, and now half your day is spent fixing up the mistakes that happened yesterday. Same thing with arithmetic. There's many. You don't have to look very further than YouTube for those cases where what it said the distance was and what the distance ended out to be were two different. I guess we're off by a foot. There's a famous one when they built the new dock for the ferries to PEI that leave up in near New Glasgow there. The difference between the deck of the ferry. There was a meter. When they brought the ferry up to the dock, the deck of the ferry was off from the dock by a meter. So, was that because somebody couldn't do the arithmetic? Or I have a picture when I worked for a telephone company of they're ready to turn up a telephone facility and they're 100 feet short in the amount of cable. Well, how do you end up 100 feet short in the amount of cable when you're doing a big job? Well, because, and there's evidence, we did the activities already, there's evidence that arithmetic isn't necessarily a strong skill. So that's an advantage for people to whom it is. So if you look around and you say, buddy over there couldn't do arithmetic if I put a gun to her head. Well, not that you wish her bad, but in terms of your career prospects, yours are looking good because you can do it. What about Michelin? Anyone ever take the arithmetic test? When you go to Michelin, if you want to work there, they make you do an arithmetic test because they know the cost to their business of people who can't do arithmetic. So, well, I'm not quite sure. Weaknesses that if somebody's running a business and I want to hire somebody, if I know they're weak in blueprints, if I know they're weak in arithmetic, they're not on the top of my list for hiring. So the cure is provide some evidence in your portfolio of your strength in blueprints, your strength in arithmetic. So when that concern comes up amongst the person who's hiring you, do you think you could figure out how to go from metric to decimal? Oh no, man, I never was very good at. I'm a tradesman, man. I'm not never really good at arithmetic. Suddenly he says, "Man, you're going to cost me a bunch." What about reading this blueprint? Oh man, I'm really good at bending conduit and putting in switches, but phew, that's Greek to me. You're going to cost me money. So it's not that your deficiency is anything wrong with it. I'm looking at it from a business sense. If you're responsible to make sure things measure up and you can't do arithmetic, if you're responsible to make sure things go in the right place, with the right orientation, with the right size, and you can't read a blueprint, that's going to cost me money. And if I have to make $500 a day just to stay afloat, I don't have time. So the advantage to you is to say, I understand that. And I want to provide some evidence for the employer that